Welcome to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. आप सबको प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब and shalom. Sometimes I wonder where to start and where to stop because the things are happening they always happen on daily basis in different places, different things happen. But some of the things are like they happen, they take you forward and then you go back, then you go forward, then you go back again. So there are a few things which I'm going to talk about today. First, I will start with the Ukraine war. Excuse me. A lot of people, they are already getting fatigue from hearing what is happening in Ukraine. Russia, which is bogged down right now, they have this Wagner group, which is fighting, which is a private army, which is fighting the war for Russia and Ukraine, and how, when, and where it will end up, we don't know. Nobody really knows because there are two aspects to it. One, of course, is the Russian aspect, where we have Vladimir Putin, who has his own idea about why he invaded Ukraine. Let me remind again to the viewers that Ukraine at one point had nuclear weapons. When Russia broke down, 5 nations, nuclear powered nations, they guaranteed Ukraine its territorial integrity and the border integrity. But at the same time, the countries which were part of the East Bloc, they slowly but surely they started joining NATO. For different reasons. Yeah, democracy is one of the reasons, but I think one of the reasons which is not really discussed more is that how the money and technology from advanced countries flew into those countries. That flow of money and technology to make those countries which were still in socialistic realm and not up to date technologically, got all this money coming from other NATO countries and everything, and everybody became happy. Everybody is happy because happiness is linked with your materialistic owning, what you have in this world to show materialistically. Your property, your money in the bank account, and what kind of phone you carry with you. It is a sort of like standard bearer for the modern society. So with that, what happened was NATO actually expanded and it came next to the border of Russian border. On the other hand, Ukraine was a buffer between NATO and Russia. But in 2014, what happened was Vladimir Putin actually, went into Crimea, which was part of Ukraine, and annexed it. And that actually changed the calculations all over, at least in the Western Hemisphere, as they call it. And they started looking at it that how, if he can do today to the country which they guaranteed, including Russia, that their territorial integrity will be honored. And what happened to that honor? What happened to those agreements? They are all gone. They are out of the window. So the Western countries, or that NATO bloc along with America and Canada, they started looking at it as that Russia is walking actually towards NATO. And initially it was like within 2 to 3 days, Russia will actually march into Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. And once it has taken over, that will be end of story. And then the next chapter will start whenever it will start. And apparently, probably somewhere in his mind, Putin was thinking that he will go down in history in Russia as one of the great presidents. who actually tried to bring Greater Russia back into the formation which it was. And we should not forget certain things which, triggered the breakdown of USSR. Afghanistan was one of the major reasons, no doubt about it. And yes, a socialistic country, the way it is, because they have this kind of mindset where the extra effort, extra intelligence is not really paid like in other countries, the so-called democratic countries, because even in democratic countries we have these issues, how you define a democratic setup. So with all that having said, so right now, this February, I think it was February 24th, it will be exactly 1 year of the war between Russia and Ukraine. The countries offered the Ukrainian president that okay, Zelensky, that okay, we will give you political asylum if you come, this and that, and he refused. He actually gave a speech which the historians are making it, that speech parallel to Churchill's speech during World War II, when Germany was at war within European continent. So now what is happening, this is the winter time. During winter time, it is too cold, too much snow and rain and everything is slow in that part of the world. And let's remember one thing. It is one thing to say that we will do something, and it is something else when you start doing it and then you find out what's going on. Now at present, everybody is talking about that Moscow is planning a spring push, and I don't doubt it, because of course he is pushed to the corner and he got to do something. He had to deliver something. If he does not deliver something, that not only will kill his persona as a he-man, which he always had tried to put up, but also it is going to basically destroy Russia as Russia is today, even today, after breakup. So now the European countries, NATO countries, and even US is also, which till now was not planning to provide the tanks, especially the Abrams tanks, which is top of the line for US Army, to Ukrainian Army. They are now planning to do that. And what does that mean? That means that that fight is going to the next level. In the meantime, Germans have their tank, which is one of the best tank in the world. They have decided to do that also, to provide it to Ukraine so that they can actually resist the spring offense if it comes up, which probably it will come up. I really have no doubts that it will not come up, but the question will be how it will come up. And also the nuclear use can happen also, because Ukraine doesn't have any nuclear weapons, because they were removed from Ukraine per se on the guarantee, including Russia, that the territorial integrity of Ukraine will not be touched. Now it is Ukraine is part of Russia. Historically, when you look at the history, some of the things, it is like, if I may compare it to the history of India with Pakistan and Bangladesh and Myanmar/Burma all being part of India at one point. And the borders changed, 1947 happened, Burma was separated during World War II, And then 1947 happened, Pakistan and India, there were two countries. Then 1971 happened, Pakistan became Pakistan and Bangladesh, and India is still the way it is, with Kashmir being still fought, which actually brings me to another point, but I will discuss that after the break. So the borders change, the things change, the mentality of the people who actually rule the world, how and what they look at, it is very intricate, and it is really sometimes hard to understand from a laypoint person's view, that how these people look at it. But let's not forget one thing, that some of the decisions which are made at an instance, that changes the world history. Churchill's speech changed the world history. Zelensky's speech, it definitely changed the world history. It may not change the same way like Churchill's speech changed the world history, but it definitely have changed the world history. And because it has changed the world history, how by the end of this year, another year, 2 years, we don't know. How it will go, we don't know yet. But one thing for sure, we know that that war between Ukraine and Russia is still on, and people are paying comparatively less attention to it, even within Western Hemisphere. And definitely there are Republicans who are deadly against providing anything to Zelensky and to Ukraine, because they are saying that we have our own issues in the United States and money should be spent in the United States. But then again, we should not forget, before United States entered World War II, it was same kind of mindset. Oh, we have nothing to do with that. War is somewhere else. We should not be touched. Till ultimately it hit the United States. 9/11 happened. It did hit the United States. The World War II at that time, it was the people, everything was not that much sophisticated. Now it is too much sophisticated. So we have to keep an eye on all these things. So let us take a break. After the break, we will continue on this subject and also about the nuclear thing, that how nuclear mentality can change the aspect of some of the leaderships, right after the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. We're talking about the difference between if you have a nuclear weapon and what happens. Before I actually left my office today to come over and do the show, I was going through certain things, and I came across that 2019 surgical strike and after effects of that. Yes, there is a big debate going on in India about whether it happened or not, and if it happened, how it happened. And yes, it was happening before also, but it was not discussed openly. But once it is discussed openly, then how the posture changes of the leadership. And as per a book by Pompeo, who was Secretary of State, it just came out, and I haven't read the book yet, and I do intend to get it at least, and so that I can read it probably later on. In that book, he has mentioned, and I'm quoting this from the news media where it has been printed, and neither Indian government has commented on that, nor anybody else. And it was Sushma Swaraj, who is not with us anymore, who actually made a call to Mike Pompeo, who was in Vietnam at that time, regarding North Korea missile crisis and nuclear crisis, like they put it out, where Sushma Swaraj mentioned to Mike Pompeo, literally his staff took the phone to Mike Pompeo, and I'm quoting this from that book, and mentioned that Sushma Swaraj told that Pakistan is getting their nuclear weapons ready to throw a nuclear bomb on India. Mike Pompeo called in John Bolton, who was National Security Advisor at that time, and both of them, they went into this secured room, which basically is a sealed room where whatever is discussed, it stays in that room. There, the eavesdrop or anything, it doesn't work in those rooms. So he got in touch with the chief of Pakistan side army, chief of army on Pakistan's side, who was Mr. Bajwa at that time, and asked him, discussed with him if there is anything like that is being discussed or they are getting ready to use it. And he said, no, we are not, but we are getting the information that India is getting ready to do it. And apparently when Sushma Swaraj made the call, India was already preparing with the anticipation that Pakistan is going to use it. So at that point, it basically becomes who is going to go first. So the situation was diffused by, diplomatic interactions by all these people who were involved from India and Pakistan and from US. So that actually shows the importance of diplomacy in the world. But somehow the diplomats are not given enough credit for what they do out there for their country. Yes, they have their limitations because they are diplomats. That's why they are called diplomats. But at the same time, they also have the instructions from their governments that what to do and how to do it. For example, and I'm going to quote here exactly what transpired after 9/11. I got a call from my brother in India, who was in India at that time, and he told me, Paji, just leave everything, doesn't care, just come back to India, you will be safe here. And I told him one thing, simple, that I'm more safe here than in India. There are reasons for that. I don't want to go into those details, yes, but I'm ready to debate those with anybody, anytime, anywhere. And I will debate on the facts, not on fictions, not on just made up stories. So let's leave that part out. Coming back to the point. So what happens is that somehow that discussions which take place, they should be part of the society. Some of them, they come out down the road, some of them they don't. And also there is one thing which I'm going to say here. I always share this thing. When I was in college, I started learning how to fly in Patiala Aviation Club. And yes, I went solo, my record and everything as part of history. The instructor over there, Mahajan, very nice person. When we interacted, the very first thing he said during our conversations about, all the procedures and what to do and what not to do, blah, blah, blah. There was one thing during that experience which he mentioned. He said that United States has a plane which is called X-15, which is basically a testing plane. For what? Which you found out later on, which I found out later on, that F-16 was designed based on some of the flights which took place on X-15. X-15 actually was a plane which will carry the model of F-16 pre-manufacturing to test aerodynamics and other things, which means basically X-15 will gather the speed, the minimum speed required for F-16 to be airborne, and after that X-15 will separate from F-16, and then F-16 test pilots, they will do whatever they had to do and come back and land with the parachutes and everything. So what I'm saying is, to go to next level in anything, you first have to have the groundwork done. And that groundwork is done by our previous generations. And if we don't utilize that groundwork to better the society, to better our place of work, to better the country where we live or the country where we are from, then it is our weakness or our unintellectual way of working. That's the only thing which I can say. So coming back to those points, so now we are at that point where whatever happens between Ukraine and Russia, one thing is for sure, world is not the same anymore. The prices of everything have skyrocketed through the roof because Ukraine was a huge source of wheat and sunflower, which is the staple for everyday food. So having said that, now when we look at the inflation, inflation basically is part of that also. Now coming back to the other aspect of what happened in India, BBC released a documentary, 2 episodes. I haven't seen it yet. But one thing is for sure, that it has been banned in India, and at Jawaharlal Nehru University, when they tried to watch it, the power was cut off, and this is all in the news. And my point basically is, what I'm trying to say here is, we should actually accept anything which comes out and face it and answer it, not censor it. Freedom of speech is a part of democratic setup, and it is so important. I'm going to, after the break, I'm going to talk about this in a big way, because at Harvard University something happened. It is regarding the freedom of speech. Right after the break, Harvard University, what it is. Welcome back to main stream with Harpreet Singh Toor. We're talking about freedom of speech. In any society where the development of the society is important, the freedom of speech is also very important. Yes, there should be a restraint on what you speak publicly, but at the same time, whatever is said should not be gagged at all. Burning of Quran is an act. It is condemned. Everybody condemns it, and it has to be condemned, no doubt about it. But I will at the same time say, if somebody tries to include it in the freedom of speech, I think it is too far-fetched for the freedom, because that is how some of them are saying. Yeah, freedom of speech is there, but it doesn't mean that you should be disrespecting the other faith's revered books. And that is how, when Guru Granth Sahib incidences happened in India, that's how we look at it. Even though it is the writings which are written on that paper which makes it what that is, whether it's Quran or Guru Granth Sahib or Bible, those writings are indestructible. Those cannot be, you cannot destroy them, but at the same time, a due respect should be given when you talk about it. So by putting up the gag order on documentary, there are other ways where the people will look at the documentary. It is better to let it go and take out the steam from it. But when you try to, it's like, a ball, you go on pressing, and at one point it will explode. Same thing, if you go on doing that, somewhere it will happen. But now coming to what happens here in the United States, I always admire the freedom of speech here, where I gave an example of somebody burning American flag and the judge letting him go under freedom of speech, because guy was poor, he did not have the resources. His only resource was he wanted to demonstrate and show up for the cause, and this is what he picked up. Even though I don't agree with the object which he picked up, but at the same time I agree with the judgment which was given. Now, at Harvard University, which is known as a mecca of all these great things which happen in the world. If you ask anywhere in the world, the people, when you ask them their dream universities, they are like Columbia, Harvard, Yale, and then anything else, including Oxford. They are the top university, Oxford in England. So there was a gentleman named Kenneth Roth who ran Human Rights Watch for 29 years, which is a very well-respected organization. Yes, everybody may not agree with what they do or what they write, but it is a very well-respected organization as far as a watch group is concerned. And he was reached out from Kennedy School, Harvard Kennedy School of Public Affairs, as that if he would become, as a tenured professor, or he will become a professor at Harvard University. He had made a couple of statements about Israel, occupation of Palestinian property, and how Israel treats Palestinians. Based on that, there was a pressure on Harvard University. I don't have the details on that, but definitely there was a pressure on Harvard University that should not go ahead. And Harvard University actually ended up re-signing that from that position to Kenneth Roth. And after that, he applied at Princeton, and they agreed to have him. And later on, Harvard also went back and, they asked him to come back and join Harvard. And, but for me, the question is, when these universities, when they talk about freedom of speech, they should also expect these things. When somebody speaks, and I have discussed previously, sometime on the university, you have a professor who actually is somebody who has a different opinion than you or the student's body, which is part of that university, and they will demonstrate, and the dean of the university or somebody from the university will disinvite the professor. That's not right. There was a professor in Penn State University who actually wrote against Asians, made statements against Asians and their intellect and everything, and she was of the opinion that the number of Asians should be restricted. There was a movement to get her kicked out from the university. And there is, and probably she is kicked out. If not, there definitely is. And I was against that, being an Asian. Why? Because if we want a freedom of speech cannot be subjective. If I want something, I like something, it's freedom of speech. If I don't like something, no, it is not. No, you cannot. You cannot have, like they say, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. So that is something which really did shock me when I came to know about it. And yeah, I wanted to share with my viewers so that they can actually look at it. The thing is, basically, I want you to get out of that mode of easiness, explore, go out, look at it, challenge it, and see what happens. Unless you do that, you will be stuck in those certain ways, because what happens is the algorithm which is used in our phones, whether you watch YouTube video, you go to Spotify, you go to Instagram, you go to Twitter, you go to anything, even Google, okay, Binge from Microsoft. What happens if you are looking at certain things 3-4 times? The advertisement will be only for those things. If you shop online, the advertisement will be only from those stores, which means what? They are actually restraining your wider view of the world. Same way, when you restrict the freedom of speech, you restrict the wider view of the things in the world. If you're not afraid of what is being said about you, then why you should be complaining about it? Face it. And that is what I will say here, whether it is that documentary on Indian Prime Minister Modi regarding Godra, or it is the speech of Iranian president at Columbia University, which was given at Columbia University, even though at that time the mayor of the time, Rudy Giuliani, was against it. And we know where he is today and what is happening with him today. And same thing with our previous president, the former president, Donald Trump. And that actually brings me to that documents which we are talking about, classified documents. They found in with the Vice President Pence also now. Now let us look at it. I'm going to talk about it after the break actually, that Trump had it, he refused to give it. Biden had it, he gave it. Pence had it, he gave it, which means there is something somewhere where there are no rules and regulations about how to handle these classified documents. And that is something which needs to be looked at. And yeah, there are some of the issues with that, which I will talk, after the break. But in the meantime, before we go for the break, there's something which I want to talk about, that Trump was fined $1 million for a lawsuit which he filed against Hillary Clinton regarding stolen election of 2016 and Russian involvement in that election. So that's where we are today. So let us take a break, and after the break we will talk about, like I mentioned, about these confidential classified documents and anything else. Welcome back again with the Harpreet Singh Toor on Mainstream. We're talking about freedom of speech in that part. There is one more thing which I want to mention. A Fox News analyst was kicked out of a cafe in Florida. That's not fair. There are a lot of things which people say. Like I mentioned, I was on a Hannity show. It used to be Hannity and Combs. He did ask me some question, and when I answered that question, he didn't like the answer. I knew it then that he has this thing about minorities. But it doesn't mean that I hate him. That is his opinion. He can have that. But if I get the chance to speak to him again, have a cup of tea with him again, I will go and have it. I have no problem with that. I have my opinion, my views. He has his opinion, his views. And if somebody from the Fox News went for a cup of coffee, it doesn't mean he or she should be heckled and told, no, you are not welcome here. It's like that person where the case actually is in the US Supreme Court right now, who refused to make a cake for someone who happens to be LGBTQ person. So why? It is same thing like in the last show I talked about Harpreet Dillon. The comments were made about her, derogatory comments. No, those are not acceptable. That should not be acceptable to anybody, anywhere, if we really want and we believe in a democratic and fair society. Then everybody has their own opinion and they can have it, but they cannot push somebody else to accept what they are saying or black them out, like it happens in a lot of places in the world, not just in India, but other places also. We should not forget that, MLB, the person who is the crown prince for Saudi Arabia, he was involved in a murder, killing of Khashoggi, where the directions are that he was involved, but he's saying he has no role in it. Well, that was also because of critical writings and the articles which he wrote about some of the things which were happening. So for me, the question is, we should then work to stop those things from happening than just trying to gag the person who brings it to you. It's like killing the messenger, that like it goes on. Yeah, we were talking about classified documents. Some classified documents were found at former Vice President Mike Pence's house, and they were turned over to Department of Justice immediately. Now, for me, yeah, I was really upset when those documents showed up at Joe Biden's place, based on, what I know about him. I have read about him, and I have seen certain things about him. I was really upset, but at the same time I was saying he should be treated same way like Trump is being treated for those classified documents. Now all of a sudden today I found out that they found some documents at Mike Pence's place also. What is happening? Which means basically, when these elected officials, when they retire, they have their communications which actually go into presidential libraries for the research, for the people who actually do research on the presidential duration of those people, and some of the documents are unclassified down the road because of certain reasons, certain things, or whatever it is. So now we found the documents at Mike Pence's place. So I just wonder who is going to be the next, where we will find some more classified documents. But in the meantime, what is happening is the Justice Department of the DOJ, like they call it, has written back to Jim Jordan, who actually did not appear in front of the congressional committee who was interviewing and investigating January 6th. He actually wrote a letter to DOJ to hand over certain documents, and DOJ said, nope, we will not. Why? Because when there are inquiries or where they have active inquiry going on, the Department of Justice, they are like, we cannot do that because that can compromise their source, and also how it happened. But that brings me to one point, where the former President Trump said that one of the press reporter who actually gave about Roe versus Wade to Politico, that people who printed and whosoever gave it, if he is traceable, then that person should be put behind the bars till he or she gives the name of the person from Supreme Court, because Supreme Court has not been able to find who did it. That is not called, the way to solve the situation, to solve whatever we are planning to do or whatever we want to do. That's where the freedom of press, freedom of speech is so important. And DOJ, by telling Jim Jordan that nope, we will not give it to you just because you asked. So there is going to be very interesting next 2 years till 2024 election happens, and then we will see what happens. But in the meantime, another fight is brewing in the Congress right now, where Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, has mentioned that he's not going to give committee assignment to certain people because of their faith, if I may say so. So on the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffrey has told that that will not be accepted, just because 2 Republicans, they were actually, their assignment to the committees were taken away because one of them actually literally threatened one of the other elected congressperson. And that brings us to where it is happening, that the husband of the speaker, the previous speaker, Nancy Pelosi, was attacked in the House. It is all that, hype which has been created by elected officials and the media. I was always told that the head of a family, if there is something wrong, he or she need to say what is right and what is wrong and where to draw the line. When those lines are blurred, things happen. Same things are happening in a lot of places in the world where the lines have been blurred, and the people on the top, they just keep mum. They will not say anything. And that's how January 6th also happened in the United States. That the person at the top at that time, Donald Trump, first he invited the people that January 6th will be very interesting. And those people were the people who attacked. And now those people are actually facing jail time, and they are spending money on the attorneys and everybody, while Trump, in the meantime, amassed more money in the name of that. And he's going to run again. For 2024, he has already declared, and he is going to do whatever he does. And another thing which I'm going to say today before I wrap up the show is that even though Kevin McCarthy is the speaker, but I personally believe that based on Kevin McCarthy's actions in the last 2 years, everything is being controlled by the former president Donald Trump. And if he gets his way, and this, we have already hit the debt limit, and we don't have any more money to pay the bills which we have already committed to, Donald Trump will make this country bleed, because he is a person who actually looks for the revenge. If you want to get into the politics, you should not be looking for revenge. You should be looking how to make the life better, how to make the things better. Yes, everybody makes a mistake. If you make a mistake, admit it. In my work, I have done mistakes. Politically, when I ran, yes, probably I made some mistakes. Definitely I must have done some mistakes. But it does not mean that I should be just seeking a revenge on somebody for that. So with that note, I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday, same time at 6 p.m. on Jus Hindi with Mainstream, with whatever will happen in the next week. Till next time, good night and good luck.